No Credits Rolled.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of No Credits Rolled. My name is Sam Whalen, your host. Now, it's still E3 season, folks, even though E3 has sadly shrugged off this mortal coil. We're still getting conferences, we're still getting announcements, and this time on the show, we're going to cover the latest Nintendo Direct, which had some honestly very surprising announcements. And then we're going to get into my thoughts on Rise of the Ronin and Valorant on console. So that's right, PC gamers, get your pitchforks ready. I'm coming for you. But before we get started, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast, wherever you get audio will be there for you. Just search No Credits Rolled. We're also on TikTok and YouTube at No Credits Rolled. So check us out there. We try to do some breakout content, some video content for you. If you could drop a subscribe, a comment, a like, anything like that always helps us out and helps out your algorithms as well. So let's start the show.
Do you know any place where sailors hang out?
So this was in the Nintendo Direct for June 2024. Kind of came out around the same time as the Xbox conference and the Ubisoft conference and Summer Games Fest and all that stuff. This was sort of Nintendo throwing their hat in the ring for this time this year. And, you know, in my opinion, Nintendo is really swinging for the fences with this one. I think they wanted to keep up with the other summer conferences. They wanted to have some announcements that people really weren't expecting to make some headlines, and they definitely did that. So this Direct had multiple announcements in it that I personally cared about, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it. Multiple announcements that I was very impressed by. I still rate it a little bit lower than the Xbox conference, but it's tough to compare, right? Because, where Xbox is at, what we expect from them, and where Nintendo is at, what we might expect from them. For someone who isn't a hardcore Nintendo fan, this conference definitely surprised me and definitely had some stuff in there that it really made me, sort of tune in and be surprised by. So we'll cover that here. So this recap comes from Adam Bankhurst over at IGN. I just pulled the list from him, and we sort of just go down there, and I cherry-pick the things that I wanted to cover. But you can always go check out the full Direct yourself if you want to see all the announcements and some things I might have missed. There's a bunch of little announcements at the end that I didn't cover because, honestly, it's a bunch of games that I'd never heard of and didn't really interest me. But anyway, so I'd say there's competition here. So we'll cover the two biggest announcements first. We had The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom announced for Nintendo Switch, starring Zelda as a protagonist. And that's coming this year. Coming September 26th, featuring Zelda as your protagonist. Now, going into this, I was talking with a friend, and I joked, we always talk about, hey, what are you expecting from this conference? I jokingly said, we're going to get a new Zelda game. And then we did. So that was something. I think this looks great. I'm surprised it's releasing on the current Switch, but I guess because they're doing the Link's Awakening remake art style, it maybe makes it run easier, right? Like they're not updating maybe the engine or whatever they run that in. They're just making a new game with it. So, I do own Link's Awakening remake. I haven't played it. I've only played the starting area, maybe 15, 20 minutes of it. I do remember it chugging when it was docked. I remember dropping frames in that. So, I don't know. I'm curious how this new game's going to run on the current Switch. I'm sure it'll get, whenever the Switch 2 comes out, I'm sure we'll get it on there as well. But they did say this is going to be the last Zelda game for this Switch, so before the new one comes out. So the last hurrah. And honestly, I think this was a huge surprise, right? You watch the trailer and it starts and people think it's going to be a Link to the Past remake, which I'm sure people would have been more than happy with. That's a game I want to check out. I started the original because I think you can play that on Switch, but I'll get into it later on in this section, but remakes get me in a lot better when it's updated and things like that. So anyway, the trailer starts and people think it's a Link to the Past remake. And then Link disappears and Zelda takes over in the narrative, and you find out it's a Zelda-centric game, which is pretty crazy. In terms of gameplay, they showed off that Zelda has a tri-rod, which, based on how it works with like copying and pasting things, it looks like it's going to be a lot of that classic Zelda Nintendo sandbox stuff where they give you, especially these last two recent Zelda games, where it's here's all the tools, we'll give them to you right in the beginning of the game, and then you've got the rest of the game to play around and discover all the little things that you can do with these tools. And it looks like that's kind of what the tri-rod is. The tri-rod is your big tool and is what's going to be driving most of the gameplay. I think it's always nice to see something new from these franchises. I mean, sure, it's still a Zelda game, so it's still the same IP. I guess you could call it a sequel because it looks like it's in the timeline of Link to the Past. I'm not necessarily as up on the lore for Zelda as I should be. But this, with Zelda as a protagonist is sort of what I'm driving at here, of this franchise doing something new. I think is really unique, and I think it's a good thing. I think, especially for it being the last Zelda on Switch, for them to sort of just squeeze this in there and be like, hey, we're going to give you something totally different for our sort of last hurrah on this generation of console. Now, will I pick it up at launch? I'm not sure. Honestly, it's weird for me playing things on the Switch. I just don't play the Switch very often, so a lot of times I'll wait for a sale, or if it's coming to another platform, I will wait. Obviously, this is a Zelda game, so it's not going to go anywhere else. It might depend on the price point. I might wait for a sale. I know I picked up Link's Awakening on a sale, so we'll see. But definitely, I'm sure Zelda fans are definitely eating with this because, I haven't even finished Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, so I'm right at the end of Tears of the Kingdom. But I have yet to finish that, have yet to roll credits on it. But yeah, happy for Zelda fans and excited to see what this game looks like when it fully comes out because, it's something different. Speaking of games we're excited to see fully come out, Metroid Prime 4 gameplay. It had a subtitle. It got a new title. Let me look that up. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And hey, that's a cool title. I think, there's that old adage where, like, if you go past 3 games or 3 of something, you don't call the 4th one whatever 4. You have to give it some kind of title. Anyway, but they showed gameplay. I mean, we haven't heard about this game since, like, forever ago, right? E3 2017. So 5 years? No, more than that. 7 years? And we just got gameplay in this direct, just out of nowhere. It looks like Metroid Prime. I played a little bit, maybe like an hour of the Metroid Prime remake and really, really liked it. I just never played any more of it because other stuff came up. But that Metroid Prime remake is something I really want to go back to because I was very much impressed by that. I've never played a Metroid game and playing that game, I was like, wow, this came out. I had that game when I was a kid on GameCube, but I never played it because I think it freaked me out or the controls were too difficult to understand. I didn't know what was going on. But playing that remake, I was thoroughly impressed. And Metroid Prime 4 here looks like it's going to be more of that, but updated. I mean, it looked visually very impressive. So I'm assuming they're going to save it for a Switch 2. They gave a window of 2025, so maybe we're going to get that Switch 2 in 2025, holiday 2025. Who knows? But yeah, this was one of those handful of super surprising announcements at this Direct. They just dropped Metroid Prime 4 gameplay. I mean, this was one of those games that every time conference season comes up, people bring up, are we going to get a release date? Are we going to get gameplay for Metroid Prime 4? People started to wonder if it was even going to come out. And Nintendo came out and said, hey, here it is. So 2025 is the window for that. We will see what happens there. Again, hoping they save it for a Switch 2 because the Switch is very much showing its age. And I think it's going to need something based off of what they showed. It's going to need a little bit more oomph in the hardware to really make this thing nice and pretty. All right, so next I want to cover, we had Dragon Quest 3, which then turned into Dragon Quest 1 and 2, the 2D, 3D remakes. I've never played a Dragon Quest game in my life. I think the only thing I know about, actually, that's not true. I played like 5 minutes of whatever one came to Games Pass just because it was there. It was all right, it didn't really blow me away. But like I said, I played very little of it. It just didn't really capture me. And I played as the guy or the hero in Smash Brothers when that released. So that's all of my knowledge of Dragon Quest. But these 2D, 3D remakes are very appealing to me. I played Octopath Traveler 1, and I started 2 because that came to Games Pass recently. And, I like those games. Never finished one, of course, because it's kind of the whole concept of the show that I don't finish games, but I play too many of them. But I really like that 2D, 3D art style. I think it works very well, especially for these kind of games. I think it's a great job. It does a great job of letting you have that retro feel, like the sprites, right? The retro pixel sprites. I think it fits very well when you're interpreting or being inspired by classic games like Dragon Quest. So, I might pick this up at launch. It looked pretty cool. I've never, like I said, never really gotten into these games. But if they're gonna do this art style, and this is how they're they're bringing it to, this generation, might be something I check out. Like I said, it's always good to see classic games made available to a new generation, even if it's not a one-to-one port, which some people might want. I think it's nice to have these remasters that can reinterpret the game and sort of update it for our more modern eyes. I don't know why, but I've been playing the Gears of War 1 remaster just because I got nothing but time on my hands, apparently. And, that game looks great, that remaster of that first Gears of War game. And the game still holds up. The dialogue still holds up. All the stuff they didn't change, these character interactions, the gameplay, all that stuff still holds up. It just got that fresh coat of paint on it. Because if you go watch footage of like Xbox 360 Gears of War, it looks awful. Like it just looks like mud and like very dark and poorly lit. But like this remaster fixes a lot of that. It makes it look much more visually impressive. And then you get to experience a classic game that if you were to try to boot it up today, if you dug up a 360, which, I still have a 360, but not everybody does, it makes these games more accessible and I think more appetizing. I don't know if that's the right word, but it makes them easier to play. And I might even talk about the Gears of War remake on this show. I'm kind of saving it to see if I want to cover it because I am a big Gears fan, and this Dragon Quest remake announcement kind of made me think of it, and I wanted to mention that on the show real quick. But yeah, also really for Dragon Quest, really good art. They revealed it with the announcement, this like key art, and they showed 3, and then they played like that Dragon Quest sound, like the theme. You guys know it probably if you're a Dragon Quest fan. And then they showed the other 2 games are coming too, and the very cool art. I mean, I just wanted to shout out the art. I thought it looked cool. Anyway, next game, we have Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which, if you look it up, HD is kind of a stretch, but that arrives on Switch in January 2025. I've never played a Donkey Kong game, but Diddy Kong is my main man. I love that little guy. He's my favorite character in Smash. I like monkeys in general. They're my favorite animal. So Diddy Kong, I've loved him ever since he was a kid. He also has guns and a jetpack, which I thought was cool when I was younger. Nothing against Donkey Kong, just something about Diddy Kong I've always just found very appealing. But I've never actually played a Donkey Kong game. So, might jump in with this one. It looks like a great time, and I know people, I don't know if this game is beloved, but most of the Donkey Kong games are very beloved. It is a port. It looks pretty rough. If you watch the reveal of it, it looks like they literally just took the game from when it came out and just kind of put it on Switch. And I read this today. I was actually doing the show notes right before I recorded. Turns out this bad boy is going to cost a full $60, which is tough. I definitely will not be picking this one up at launch. $60, right? That's Nintendo. Nintendo knows what they got, and they know that the majority of people are going to pay for it. Hey, it's good that people can now play this game on Switch. It's good that, Nintendo gets a lot of flack for all their ports. And while they can be egregious, right, in terms of price point, I think having all these games available on a system that everybody can buy is a good thing, right? Like, not everybody has a GameCube, or not everybody knows or wants to emulate things. So, like, having all this stuff ported onto one, and the Switch is portable, which is another plus. But, aside from the price points, which is, bad, right, because Nintendo wants to rake us over the coals for stuff that they have on a flash drive, I think there are benefits to it other than just, well, the benefit, I think, is having these games available. The downside is they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for it because they know people are going to buy them. Speaking of sort of ports, this was a pretty big announcement for fighting game people. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, Arcade Classics, is bringing 7 beloved games to the Switch. So as someone who really wants to be good at fighting games but isn't, I also loved Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as a kid. This was a pretty big announcement. It's kind of crazy. This was just in a direct, like just kind of dropped in, not at EVO. This was insane. If you watch, go look up Maximilian Dude's reaction to understand how big of a deal this was for the fighting game community. I don't really consider myself a part of that because I don't really get it like those guys do. But if you watch Max's reaction, it's very wholesome, and you can kind of see the gravity of this announcement for the people in the FGC. And I'll sort of paraphrase him here a little bit. Like, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is like one of the most popular games of all time. Like people who don't even like fighting games, like or are good at fighting games, like myself, that aren't good at them, consider MVC2 like one of their favorites. And you couldn't really play it anywhere, right? Like you'd have to get the emulators. And now that it's just coming to Switch and Switch and PlayStation, no Xbox, unfortunately. But now that it's finally available, I think that's a pretty big deal. Plus, you're getting 6 other games. Obviously, the big headline, the banner one is MVC2, but I've never played any of the other games in this collection. Like, I want to play Children of the Atom. I forget the titles of the other ones, but like, there's something about the art style of these games. And for the record, I'm coming to these games for the Marvel side of things. Street Fighter and Capcom is fine. I don't really have much of an investment in many Capcom characters, but Marvel, I love the designs of these characters in, Marvel versus Capcom. And, that I think that game is a lot of the reason why I love the X-Men today so much. Like the X-Men animated series, now X-Men 97 and Marvel versus Capcom 2, I think played a lot into why I love the X-Men so much. So I'm really excited to play the other games in this collection and kind of get a feel for them and to kind of just experience these games as they were when they came out. And since X-Men 97, I've been dying to play a new X-Men game or some kind of X-Men game. So getting Marvel vs. Capcom 2 back and then all these other games to explore, pretty cool. And definitely looking forward to it. And I think coming to Switch is a great idea because then people can take it on the go. You can have tournaments wherever you want. I think in the announcement they said online is going to have full rollback netcode and stuff, which I know is a very big deal. Online play, all that stuff. I'll definitely be jumping in day one for that. 7 beloved arcade classics coming to Switch courtesy of this Nintendo Direct. Pretty big deal. So what else we got? We have Tales of the Shire, a Lord of the Rings game, lets you live a peaceful life as a hobbit. So this game's a little weird. I knew this was announced, but I didn't know like what the deal with it was, like in terms of when it was coming out or where it was coming out. It looks a little rough. It definitely looks a little rough. I mean, the people in charge of the Lord of the Rings IP, they clearly want to just squeeze as much money as possible out of it. I mean, at least this is somewhat creative, right? It's like, it's a game that isn't like Gollum or like, there was a dwarf game that came out that like, I don't even think anybody knew about. But this, I think this is a good idea on paper, right? A cozy game, an Animal Crossing type game where you're a hobbit in the Shire. Great. That works great on paper. In execution, what is it going to be like? How is it going to play? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to run well? We'll have to wait and see. I'll definitely wait to see what the reviews are like for this, but I'm down to try it, right? Depending on the price as well. Disney Dreamlight Valley is one that I've been coming back to recently. Every couple weeks I jump in there and do some things. It's a nice, it's a relaxing game. If you don't want to jump on, Apex and get destroyed or something competitive, you just want to kind of turn your brain off and, tend to your farm or talk to your favorite Disney characters. That's kind of what I do in that game. It's just nice to kind of relax every once in a while with a game. And if I could do that in Lord of the Rings, I'm down. I think they showed Gandalf in the trailer because you gotta. I hope they use the music if they're allowed to. I don't know. The rights for Lord of the Rings are like all over the place. But if they can use the music, that's going to make it, that's going to elevate it because that music is like some of the best music you'll ever hear in your life. So if they can just use the Shire theme, immediately a 10 out of 10. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see about that one. This next one was kind of weird, but another one of those things where when you see it, you go, wow, I can't believe no one ever made this. Looney Tunes, Wacky World of Sports. IGN says it looks like a zany good time. But this looks like NBA Jam, but with Looney Tunes. So like a Space Jam game. I can't believe this took this long to make. I wonder how it'll play. I did play a lot of NBA Jam, but I played it on mobile. This is back in the day when like I had an iPod or iPhone, one of them, for the first time. And you can get a lot of these full games on there. You used to be able to, like I used to play COD Zombies on there. And NBA Jam was one of the games that I would play on my phone. So, not quite the NBA Jam story that most people have with the beloved sports game. But having that with the Looney Tunes characters is great. I think that's a great idea. And, you can maybe I don't remember much of the trailer, but if they work in different powers and things like that with the different characters, I think that's a good idea. If this is under $20, that would be ideal. And, pick it up with friends, play with friends. NBA Jam, that kind of game I think is always going to be fun, especially for people like myself that are just awful at 2K and don't understand it. I think something a little bit easier and a little bit more accessible like this is a little bit more my speed and maybe other people's too. But that was actually the last announcement I had for the Nintendo Direct. What were some of your favorite announcements? There were a lot of quick ones I missed or didn't cover in this because I didn't really know about them. But if there was something that jumped out at you, let me know in a comment. And how would you rate this compared to the other conferences? Like I said, I would put it definitely below Xbox. But for Nintendo Direct, I kind of go into these with no expectations. And when I get multiple things that surprise me, I give that a pretty high review, a pretty high grade. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I will be giving my thoughts on Rise of the Ronin and console Valorant. You're listening to No Credits Rolled.
I'm looking for sailors.
All right, and we're back on No Credits Rolled. Just got done covering the latest Nintendo Direct, and now we're going to review some games. So Rise of the Ronin is an action RPG developed by Koei Tecmo's Team Ninja. They're known for Neo, Wolong Fallen Dynasty. They're Dead or Alive games, which I didn't know they made those. I mostly know them for Wolong. Because I played Wolong when it came out on Games Pass. I think I tried Neo a couple times, but it really didn't click with me. Wolong I played a decent amount of until that game just got to be too much. I found the boss fights extremely annoying. And you can always say get good, but I think there were just like mechanical things where I was like, all right, there's no amount of getting good that's going to get me through this. I'm just going to put this game down. So that Wolong is sort of my point of reference going into this game. And it keeps a lot of the same feel. It keeps like the Souls-like combat that was in Wolong and Neo also. And then they put it into an open world RPG. I would compare it to like an Assassin's Creed, because that was what I kept thinking of when I was playing it. So I really, I don't want to be super negative, but man, is this game boring. I really wanted to like this game. I gave it multiple attempts trying to just sort of brute force my way through the story and to unlock more mechanics and new characters and stuff. But after a while, I kind of just had to give up, honestly. It just was really boring. The combat is the combat is the biggest thing this game has going for it, right? It's the standout because this is what this team does well with Wolong and Neo. But it's also basically all you're doing. Every single mission that I did in maybe the, 15 to 20 hours I played, maybe less, maybe like 10 to 15, somewhere in that range. I could check my game clock, but I'm not going to do that. Every mission seemed to be go here, kill guys, right? Sometimes you fight a boss, which is like usually a 1v1, or in story missions, you get more cinematic boss fights that are akin to something you see in Wolong, where you get like a cutscene in the beginning and then you fight, and there's different mechanics and things like that. But like, there's so much combat in this game, and there's like nothing else. There's stealth mechanics, but it's like baby's first stealth, where you sneak up on a guy and you can one-shot him unless you don't do enough damage, then you just do a bunch of his health. There's cool takedowns, like you can unlock an ability where there's a very lengthy RPG skill point system that I didn't get super far into because you need a lot of points, and I didn't do it. But like you can get a takedown where you use your grappling hook to grapple a guy up off the ground and like snap his neck, which is fine. But like, I don't know. It's just, there's so much about this game that I feel like has either been done before in games like Assassin's Creed or done better in games like, Ghost of Tsushima and stuff, that there's really nothing in this game that makes it stand out for me to make me want to keep playing it. It just felt very vanilla and very bland. Now the combat is fun for a while, right? They do I think Neo had this where there's different stances. So it's like rock, paper, scissors fighting enemies where certain stances work better against other stances. And, they tell you if it's a blue arrow, you're doing the right stance. If it's a red arrow, you're not. And then you switch it and then you just kill them. It feels very samey after a while. There are cool executions, right? You can break enemy stagger bars and then get cool executions off. It's still got that Team Ninja feel that people like, that I enjoyed in Wolong, but again, eventually got bored of. There isn't a whole lot of enemy variety, right? I mean, there's, at least in my time that I played, maybe things changed down the line. There's spear guys, there's shield guys, there's sword guys. If you've played Ghost of Tsushima, it's very similar enemy types. The boss enemies, there's definitely variety because a lot of the big like tentpole checkmark bosses have their own mechanics, so those are fun. Except for one, the one I did, you have to fight like your blade twin, and that first fight is like super aggravating. But I got through it, so I'm proud of myself for that. But anyway, yeah, I just found so many of the missions to be so samey in terms of the combat. There's a bond mechanic similar to like a Persona or like a dragon kind of, where you can increase your bond with these different companions, and then you can do companion missions to further increase that bond. And I thought that was okay. I found some of the characters to be somewhat interesting. It's like in that time period where Japan and other countries are sort of meeting for the first time. So you've got American, I think they're either American or English, I don't remember. Influences, probably English, right? Like historically wise. I watched like 4 episodes of Shogun, so that's kind of all I'm going off of. I need to go back and finish that show. But there's like those people you can interact with, and they're like a whole different faction of enemies, but they still function the same. They still got swords, and instead of bow and arrows, they have guns. And instead of being like big guys with clubs, they're like really funny. I highly recommend you look up the English like heavy type in this game. It's just a giant man with axes. It looks like something out of like Fallout BioShock Infinite, like those the robots in that game for like the theme park. It looks like that. It's like a freakish like hulking man with axes. It's very strange. So I guess that's different, that's something. Yeah, interesting things, some positives about the game, that history stuff is cool if you're into that. I think there are some historical figures, but I don't know enough about the time period to really know it. The mixing of the colonial stuff mixed in with the Shogun stuff is cool. If you've watched the Shogun show, it's kind of like that. So yeah, I mean, that's cool if you're into sort of period pieces like that. But again, I think games like Assassin's Creed do that historical fiction storytelling so much better. There's a story twist in the beginning, which they literally just do the Assassin's Creed Odyssey twist. If you've played that game, having a dual protagonist in that, it's like the same twist so far as I can tell. That is what it is. It happens very fast. I feel like the reveal in Assassin's Creed Odyssey takes a little bit longer. In this game, it's like after you finish the beginning of the game, it's like right away that you're like, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay. So, whatever. Biggest positives, I was able to make my character look like Vicious from Cowboy Bebop, kind of, which was cool. Honestly, that carried a lot of the game for me and kept me invested more than anything, like pretending I was Vicious and having a big giant sword and like messing people up. Here's the thing too. Like, I usually don't have a problem with these Ubisoft checklist open world games. I can turn my brain off, no problem, and fulfill that list. But for some reason with this game, it just like there was something about it that just didn't really get its hooks in me. And just for fun, I booted up Assassin's Creed Mirage last night to sort of get a feel for what modern AC feels like before Shadows comes out in a couple months. And the polish of that game, I talk a lot of smack on Valhalla because I really did like that game. But even still, like the polish of that game, I think is what helps me stay with it, right? Like doing parkour, like Assassin's Creed Mirage, I have yet to finish it, but it's like, it's pretty mid for an Assassin's Creed game. But the feeling of doing the parkour and stuff and the way that story sort of, or not the story, but the way that world immerses you in it, I think is just done so much better in an Assassin's Creed game than it is here. And like there is traversal mechanics in Rise of the Ronin. You get like a Breath of the Wild type glider, so that's cool. But you don't ever feel fast in it. You can't do like the Batman Arkham like dive and come up to go fast. There's like you just go in a straight line until you run out of stamina and then you fall. It's kind of boring. What else? Oh, you get a grappling hook in Rise of the Ronin, so you can grapple up to different things, but you can only grapple on certain points. So it's like another thing where it's like, okay, well, this could be cool, but then it all ends up being kind of boring. I'm being pretty negative here, but I've never been this bored by a game in a while, which is kind of crazy. Because I ask my friends, I play all kinds of garbage that keep like I played. I've talked about it before. I played a lot of Avengers, and that is the epitome of turn your brain off gameplay. But like I still play that game. And something about this game just did not work for me, which I found pretty surprising, honestly, because I thought I'd be able to at least finish the story. But hey, if you like open world games, this is one you could try. If you like Team Ninja games and their kind of combat, you're going to get a ton of that, so you could check it out. And if you like this time period, right, because I think it is a good, well, I don't know about historically accurate, but it shows this time period, which not a lot of games cover. So, you could check it out if you're into that too. But otherwise, I would honestly say you can skip this one. I just think when it came out, it was sort of dogged for being middle of the road, boring. And it is. So, I remember saying this when I did my Suicide Squad review. Sometimes the critics are actually dead on. And I think this is another example of that. So it's up to you. In my opinion, I would say skip it. But if the things I mentioned here sound like they might be appealing to you, then hey, go check it out. Who am I to tell people, what makes a game fun and what doesn't? Maybe this will appeal to you. So the other game I want to talk about today is Valorant. Of course, finally coming to console with a beta. This was announced back during Summer Games Fest, I think, or the Xbox conference. I don't remember. But I was able to get beta codes for it, and all my friends have been playing it for about a week or two now. So my biggest thing with Valorant is that it's very weird for me to have to learn the language of a new game. Since I'd never played CSGO or games like that, I went into it thinking it was going to be more like Overwatch or Rainbow Six, but it's really not close enough to either of those games to compare. It's sort of its own breed, its own beast. So I'm learning the language of this game, and a lot of it comes down to just aim, right? Just be better at aiming. And there's character abilities, but they're not as present as I thought they would be, right? Like you play Overwatch, and like the character abilities are extremely important in that game. I've got some complaints about Valorant, but again, you can just tell me to get good, which is fair. There's a lot of orbs. This is like, I've been complaining about this to my friends a lot, so they're probably tired of hearing it. There's too many orbs in this game. So many characters have just balls that they throw or walls of color. Lots of balls and walls. That aren't visually distinct enough to tell what is happening. I know this game is all about sightlines. So a lot of the balls are just like smoke grenades or like balls that obstruct your sightlines, but some of them hurt you. And some of them are walls that hurt you. And some of them are like, I was in like a water prison at one point that blew up. I don't even know what that was. Again, you're probably raging if you're a PC gamer or like you Googled this stuff. I have to look up many guides for this. So I'm trying to just learn as I go. But like when everyone's just chucking balls at each other, I think it can get a little confusing. There's a lot of like status effects that you can get hit with, a lot of flashbangs, and the flashbang, the way they show it in this game is really disorienting. It's not just like a screen that turns white. It's like a point on your screen that then emanates out and like covers your whole vision, which is unique. I wish the abilities were more distinct and able to tell who does what. And maybe that's not the point, right? Maybe it's just supposed to be, okay, we all kind of do sort of similar stuff in terms of obscuring sightlines. I don't know. It is what it is. Again, I got to get good. I got to lock in. This isn't really a complaint, but I think the characters look way better in their art illustrations than they do in the game. I was sort of let down by the character designs for the most part in game. But after matches, you get this like cool art of all the characters, and they look great in that. And I went into this game thinking that because I know Riot does League, stuff like that. Like I thought they were known for their super cool character designs. Maybe they are. I haven't really played a whole lot of League, but just overall, I felt that I was kind of let down by the designs of characters in this game. I picked Breach because I thought he looked the coolest for my character token. Now I know because of how this game works, everybody kind of has to be the same hitbox. You can't have like an Overwatch situation where you've got like a Reinhardt up against a Tracer. Like everybody has to be the same size. So that probably limits them a little bit. But yeah, again, I think my expectations were just too high for this game going into it because of how sort of praised it is. And it's praised rightfully so. I just think I went in with the wrong impressions. It's not a Valorant thing. It's a me thing. What else we got? I don't like the maps. I know I'm just complaining more. I think the maps are pretty lame. Again, everything goes back to sightlines here, but I keep making these comparisons to Overwatch. I think the Overwatch maps are one of the things Overwatch, not the design in terms of gameplay, but the design in terms of like feel and attention to detail and like capturing the feel of whatever location it's set in. There was like, I couldn't tell you the different maps in Valorant, really. 2 of them are very similar. And it's just, again, I went in with different expectations, and that's not really what this game's about. This game is about, clicking heads, right? And not necessarily can I hit a beer bottle on a table and break it. But hey, different strokes for different folks, I think. I do wish there were more guns. Everybody ends up using the same 4, I feel like. But hey, people want to win, and if those 4 guns are good, then why use anything else, right? A closer comparison is Rainbow Six Siege, but there are, I think, a wider variety of guns in that game. It's not just, use the Vandal because it's the best gun, or use the Ghost because it's the best handgun. I don't know. I just think I wish there was a little bit more variety in that, because then it's like, well, everybody's using the same guns, and there really isn't like that X factor. But hey, that's enough complaining from me. Some positives. I think kills are satisfying to get. You feel like a real gamer. It does the Call of Duty thing I love, where stuff pops up on your screen and you get feedback for kills. Love that. Always a sucker for that. I like the music quite a bit. I think it really adds to the tension of close matches. I've talked about Siege before, and when that music kicks in with a tense diffuse situation or plant situation, I think it can really add to a match, and Valorant does the exact same thing. There's cool like techno music. It's like you're in the Matrix. So the music is great. There's character banter. I love that. I've been talking about Overwatch so much. I love anytime characters interact in the world. I think that's super cool. Again, not a gameplay thing, but I think for me, it just kind of contributes to the overall experience. What else I got? All the guns, even though I complain there aren't enough of them, I think they all look great, especially the shotguns. Like, I think the shotguns look super cool, but even though they suck, and again, from what I've played, I think all the guns look pretty great. And I think they kind of knocked it out of the park with those designs. So I understand why this game is so big on PC, right? I mean, the whole thing is about aiming and shooting, and that's like the number one thing you can do on a PC effectively and quickly and to the level of like a pro gamer. And it's, it's under rotation still on console. I don't know how long this beta goes for, but it's nice to have a new game in our rotation, and it's nice to have these competitive games where we can pop off every once in a while and get that dopamine hit. So yeah, it's in our rotation on console with me and my friends. We'll see if it stays there, but I'm glad to have played it. I'm glad I'm experiencing this game. This was one that I've wanted to play for a while, good or bad. And it's nice that I'm finally able to now that it's coming to console. So I think that is a plus overall, despite my criticisms, is that more people can now play this game. But what do you think? Are you play Valorant? What's up? You like Valorant? You a fan of Valorant? Let me know. Anyway, that's actually all we got for episode 12 of No Credits Rolled. I want to thank you so much for listening. If you've made it this far, you can always email questions or comments to nocreditsrolled@gmail.com. Call in and leave us a voicemail. We do have a phone line, 856-209-0713. We might just play it on the air. Make sure to subscribe to No Credits Rolled on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast. And if you're feeling generous, you can check out the Patreon. Just search No Credits Rolled. We've got different tiers that you can subscribe to there, where you can tell me when I should be playing. Anyway, that's all I got. I'll see you next time on No Credits Rolled.